till 5. We talked about the rush game, something that we haven't touched on as much, though. We talked about McCord in the passing game, but his biggest ally today in that passing game, his number one target, Jackson Meeks, was tremendous today, Griffin.
Incredible. Let's see here. We had 10 catches for 161 yards. That is amazing.
And 2 touchdowns.
2 touchdowns as well.
He had his first career touchdown last week. Now he has 2 this week.
So now you're starting to develop these more options on offense, because you came in, we thought Arondé Gadsden's going to be that number one. We'll touch on that a little bit later. Another struggling game from him. Trevor Pena's really emerged on offense, but if you can get Meeks going as well, you're really diversifying your options on offense. You can see Meeks today. He can make plays downfield, throwing him jump balls. He can work on the inside of the field, in the middle of the field, deep side. There's plenty of different options you can have if you're really going to open things up on offense.
Mm-hmm. And it's not like he was going against world-class corners today in Holy Cross.
By no means.
I'd love to see Holy Cross have some world-class corners, don't get me wrong, but that was not the opponent you were going up. But honestly, I don't think that mattered today for Meeks' performance, because if you look at most of his catches that he had, it wasn't him getting, acres of separation. It was him going up, grabbing jump balls over DBs that, they might not be FBS, but they're still Division I defensive backs that were in position to make plays, defensive backs that picked off Kyle McCord 2 times and still made it tough for Meeks. He had to make some acrobatic circus catches, and I feel like that's good going forward, because if you look at the jump ball opportunities for wide receivers specifically going into the year, you think, okay, Zeke Haynes is not going to be that guy. He's underneath, he's speed, run him on drag routes. Trevor Pena is not going to be that guy. He's crafty, he'll get underneath zones, and he can make great catches, which is what he did. If you look at some of the rest of the receivers, too, Umari Hatcher's not going to be your jump ball guy, really, although he has shown flashes of someone who can do that. So who's going to be your guy coming in? If you don't have Damian Alford, who left the program in the offseason, that is Jackson Meeks, and I think he fits that role perfectly, especially against some of the smaller DBs that he can pick on. If Kyle McCord can go over the top to Jackson Meeks, that will win this team games.
It will. The more you open things up, the more options you have, the more things open up for your better players. I mean, right now, guys like Arondé Gadsden struggling to get going because he's seeing a lot of double teams. A lot of guys, all eyes on him. If you open things up on the outside, you get Meeks involved a little bit more, you get Trevor Pena going, you can't double team them all. So I like a lot of these guys in one-on-one matchups. I like Arondé Gadsden one-on-one matchups for sure. Trevor Pena has shown it really starting to build upon. The more you open up your different options on offense, you get Jackson Meeks going every week. You're not going to ask for 160 yards every week, but if he's proven to be a good, strong wide receiver too, it opens things up for McCord to make different options.
Yeah.
McCord gets his legs involved a little bit more. This offense really continues to rise to be what could be one of the best units in the ACC if you get everything going.
I will say on the Arondé Gadsden point, though, I understand last week having double teams against Stanford. That's one thing, but having double teams against Holy Cross, that should not stop Arondé Gadsden, in my opinion. And if you have an opinion on where Arondé Gadsden was today, you can call in 315-443-2011, the number to call, or you can text 315-556-3929. And we have our YouTube stream up and running, so if you want to go to WAER Sports Talk on YouTube, you can watch us there. If you're not driving in your car, you're just laying in the living room, hey, pop us on and come watch. But Arondé Gadsden today, 1 catch for 4 yards. That was it for a guy who is one of the top tight ends in the nation, especially through his season 2 years ago and then through the first 2 weeks of this season when we said, oh, he's back. And now all of a sudden in the last 2 games, he's fallen off the face of the planet, Griffin.
2 catches for 12 yards last week.
Mm-hmm.
1 catch for 4 yards this week. That is 3 catches for 16 yards.
That's good math.
Games.
Very good math.
That is. I know they say
impressive.
Broadcasters can't do math.
Yeah, that was impressive.
But that's not good for 1 game. I mean, sometimes that's not good in a half. For that to be 2 full quarters, 120 minutes of football, from your best offensive weapon is ridiculous.
Yeah.
There's no reason that's how little involvement we should have out of him. He needs to be a key factor in this offense, whether it's you need to design specific plays to get him the ball. There was one time I really liked today in the first half, the first quarter, they moved him in motion. I had him going one-on-one to the boundary. Kyle McCord overthrew him a little bit in the end zone, but different plays like that you need to get going, designed for him so he can get his momentum rolling and keep things going on offense.
Now, to be fair, he did have 7 targets, but that's still less than Umari Hatcher, Trevor Pena, LaQuint Allen even. I I mean, these guys should not be getting more targets than Oronde Gadsden, even if he's double covered. I'd like what you said. Find a way to get him open. If he's not getting open by himself, if he's facing double teams, that's where you bring in motion. That's why we see NFL offenses and college offenses that are the best are the ones that include motion to create mismatches. Oronde Gadsden, as a player, is already a mismatch.
Absolutely.
Size, physicality, speed, strength, route running, he can do it all. But if you're not going to throw to him, then what's the use of having him? Sure, he can take away DBs. Sure, he can do that if he's double covered sometimes. But if you're not going to throw him the ball, if you're not going to design plays for him to get open, you might as well not have him as an option. And sure, that's fine against Holy Cross. But if you look down the line at some teams that at the beginning of the season we said, oh, these teams look really good right now, or don't look very good before the season, like Boston College and Pitt. Now all of a sudden, those are going to be offensive shootouts, and you have to be ready for that.
You need to. Oronde Gadsden on no planet should be your decoy.
No.
That he is your best weapon on offense. He's the guy that needs to be force-fed. He needs to be involved. He can be in that middle game. He can work the sideline with him. There's no reason that he should be the guy that, we're going to pretend to run the play to him, drag two defenders away, and then we're going to throw it to Trevor Pena or Jackson Meeks. No, Oronde Gadsden, your best passing, receiving target. Mm-hmm. Callum McCord knows that he needs to be the focus of the play. Yeah. There's no reason for him to be – he doesn't need to be the focus every time, though, or every game. But more than he is right now, 3 catches in 2 games for your best target cannot happen.
Well, I agree. I think it is smart to use him as a decoy at times because he's a tight end where he can get vertical a lot better than most tight ends. He can get to the 2nd, 3rd, 4th level really, really quickly. But then at the same time, if you're just going to have him running streaks, if you're just going to have him clearing guys out and opening up space for Trevor Pena and Jackson Meeks, after a while, he might not get those double coverages because he has just become so dormant in the offense, and that's not really my worry. It's only 2 games, and it'd be tough to see Gadsden get dormant in the offense. But right now, you're kind of looking at those last 2 performances and saying, if he does not come out with a big performance against UNLV, how much a part of this offense is he still really? Because they need him, especially going down the stretch into ACC play. It's easy now, but just wait till you get a little further.
Yeah, once you're in a harder competition, you need to elevate things, and that's where I think it comes in a little bit to Fran Brown having to put a little bit more input in the offensive meeting room there. I know he trusts Coach Nixon in there, drawing plays up for his best players, but at this point, something's not working. Something needs to change. You cannot keep repeating the same things over and over again and expect different results. So you need to try something, whether that's just like we talked about, incorporating more motion, getting plays up so he's going one-on-one, and then identifying that and finding him, or just drawing something else up schematically, looking to get the ball involved with your best player.
Fran Brown struggled a little bit today against his first FCS team. You mentioned how he trusts his offensive coordinators, but again, the struggles were pretty evident today. Dino Babers was someone, and I don't, want to really surge Dino back into this, but I will say, Dino Babers always treated these FCS teams seriously, and if you have opinions on that, call in 315-443-2011 in terms of records against FCS teams and how much they really matter. But I want to read some numbers to you. Dino against FCS teams was 7-0. Fran Brown is 1-0. That to me does not matter. Dino Babers outscored opponents 372 to 51. Obviously, Fran Brown can get to that at that point, but the average of that over those 7 games was 53 to 7. And Griffin, the thing that I saw from Dino that, I saw a little bit from Fran Brown in his press conference this week against Holy Cross, but I didn't see as much as Dino. I don't know if you remember last season when Syracuse took on Colgate to open the season, but all Dino said was, this is a fantastic team. We're playing a really good Colgate team. They're better than us in some facets of the game. This is a very seriously good team. And they beat them 65-0.
Well, when at Fran Brown's press conference this week, he did say someone asked a question about, is he going to play all 5 offensive linemen the whole game or to get some momentum rolling? He stopped the reporter right there and said, no, I will go on a game-by-game basis because I'm not going to predict who I'm going to play where and when, because that would automatically be thinking of a victory, and that's not what he's going to do. So I do think he takes these teams seriously.
I agree, yeah.
But the numbers do not lie. Dino destroyed FBS teams. An average margin of victory of 53-7. Today, 42-14. Doesn't look that much different. Yeah, it's 28 points, but still, it did not feel like a 28-point victory. You are in the third quarter, and this is getting a scary, like, 1 to 2 possession game. That's not something you saw under Dino. It's not something that we should continue to see here under Fran.
No, and I agree. And I think Fran Brown, going forward will end up
I have no doubt
figuring it out. I have no doubt in Fran Brown right now, but the start is a little bit shaky. All right, we're up against our first break here on the double overtime, but make sure to call in so we can get you in after the break. 315-443-2011. We'll be back on the double overtime in just a moment.
Thank you for helping WAER cover the costs of bringing programs like Morning Edition to Central New York during our fall membership drive. Your generosity ensures we can continue delivering the news you count on each morning. It's not too late to support us. Donate at WAER.org. With your help, we're keeping trusted journalism on the air. Encourage your coworkers to tune in and support WAER as well. Thank you for being part of the family.
We know you've got a lot to do in a day, and sometimes it may not be easy to tune in at exactly the right time to catch WAER News. But WAER News is always available, wherever and whenever you are, without a paywall. Visit our website to use our live stream, or catch up on local and national news, as well as podcasts on our website at WAER.org.
At Marketplace, we help you understand what's going on in the economy and why. There is no topic too large or too small, whether it's the housing market, jobs, interest rates, even the prices we are paying at the grocery store. Our independent journalism is critical in helping you connect the dots and getting the context that you need. So, join me, Kai Risdal, every weekday on Marketplace.
Weeknights at 6 on 88.3 WAER.
During a busy day, it can be hard to make room for even one more thing. So it's a real plus that All Things Considered from NPR News is great for multitaskers. You can confidently add being well informed to your to-do list and know that you will get it done. Whether you're cleaning out your junk drawer on a quick drive or something else, listen to All Things Considered every weekday afternoon.
Weekdays from 4 to 6 on WAER.
Coming up from the far hash out of the shotgun. 3 men to the right in a bunch set. It's Gill to the left. McCord takes the snap. He's back to pass. Looking left. He's got Gill downfield. Caught! Touchdown! Darrell Gill Jr. His first touchdown in orange. And Syracuse extends its lead 13-0 with 5:02 to go in the first quarter.
Hello and welcome back to the double overtime here on WAER. Syracuse beats Holy Cross 42-14. Griffin Marcy and Hudson Ridley taking you up until 5 o'clock here on the double overtime. Right now we're about to get into the defense from today's game. What looked like an overall pretty big win. Had some struggles on defense for a little bit. If you want to get involved, give us a call. We'll talk to you all about it. Give us a call at 315-443-2011 or talk to us on our text line, 315-556-3929. You can listen on WAER 88.3 or check us out on our YouTube, WAER Sports Talk. But Hudson, I know we want to get into this. The defense started off real strong, but then it kind of faded away a little bit and had a bad stretch there in the second quarter.
You know what I would compare this defense to today?
Let's hear it.
Kind of a mid-tier roller coaster, because it only had one drop in it. The drop was pretty big. It's one of the ones where you stand at Six Flags, you look up and you go, I don't know if I can do that. The drop was pretty big in the second quarter, but overall, I think the ride was pretty smooth. You look at the first quarter defense, that was fine. And you look at the third and fourth quarter defense, that was fine. But in the second quarter, those 14 points allowed, especially on those back-to-back 70-plus yard drives, I mean, that is scary. And part of the reason why I think that happened, not even I think, part of the reason why I know that happened, somehow, some way, against FCS Holy Cross, the zone defense was so shelled and so laid off. Once you go up, 14-0, you're really going to lay off that much? I mean, they really stepped
were just
back.
Sitting back, not jamming them at the line, just letting them have room to work, just catch, pick up, just play pitch and catch for a little bit. which
Yeah.
is something you never want to let the other team's quarterback do with their receivers, is start picking up some momentum. And when you're sagging off like that, instead of putting some pressure on them at the line, being physical, it's going to make it easier for that other team to start moving things on offense and developing that connection, which is not something you want to give to the opposing team on the road ever. And that's what you saw tonight in the middle of that second quarter.
Yeah, exactly. 14 points being put up in that second quarter, 42 of them on the Syracuse side of things. So I think, the defense held strong, but the score was, a little bit close.
The score for a while there, you were at 21-14, got up to 28-14. I think it's what actually is going to really irritate me is the score finishing out is 42-14. People who didn't really watch the game are going to think, oh, Syracuse dominated them. Syracuse had this in the bag the whole way, which they did. I was never concerned they were going to lose this game, but I was concerned with this performance. We talked about that second quarter defensive struggles. The defense, they looked pretty strong for most parts of the game. I mean, you had guys stepping up like King Joseph Edwards off the bench, having 3 sacks. You saw a lot of bright spots from the defense, but I need more consistency throughout the game.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so I think the score was a little bit closer than we would have liked. Jay from Baldwinsville, we have him on the line. Jay, what did you think about the score of this game?
Yeah, guys, I kind of agree with what you're saying. It's, on paper it looks like a nice win. We put 42 points up, but really, I don't know if we accomplished quite what we wanted to with our run game. I think we finished with 125 yards rushing overall against an FCS school, and McCord throws for 385, but I really thought that we would kind of ground and pound them a little bit more today. So I don't know if our offensive line really is improving on the run. Also, guys, a question for you. I could be wrong, but did we switch place kickers?
We did.
We were struggling a little bit with with our kicking game. I don't know if we stuck with the same kicker. But, our special teams, other than the punt at number 41 when he dropped it inside the 1-yard line, that really did help us. But overall, I don't think our kicking game was on point. And then lastly, guys, one observation is I know we had to, out of necessity, move Justin Barron, our captain, to linebacker. But as we get into the meat of our schedule, I don't know how that's going to fare out. I kind of liked when they had Diggs in there earlier in the year, number 10.
I agree.
I know they moved him to defensive end, but, a couple of those things kind of stood out for me a little bit. It was good to see one receiver there other than number 2. I think it was either number 7 for us. Was it Meeks?
Yeah, Meeks. Jackson Meeks.
Yeah, he had a heck of a game, but overall, just those things. I thought we could do a little bit better in the run game than we did. I thought our defense got a little bit of off track there. After we went up 14, we got up 21-0, 14-0, and we kind of slipped back. But I guess the bright side is we got out of here with no injuries.
Yeah.
But just a couple of those things, guys, and I'd be wondering what you think about that as well.
I definitely agree with a lot of what you had to say there, Jay. We talked about the run game really poor. We did switch place kickers. Jaden O came in for Brady Denenberg after he missed 2 field goals. O missed his field goal as well. So they're 0 for 3 today on special teams.
0 for 3?
0 for 3. Look at you.
I don't want to start a nickname.
Yeah, I know, but I liked what you were saying. The score not indicative of the result. The running game not strong today, but the special teams was really bad. You have to, if you want to win games, especially when you get a little deeper in your schedule against the Power 4 opponents in conference play, you need to be strong on all 3 facets of the game. Today, you were strong on 1.5.
Yeah, and I think it's not fully Brady Denenberg's fault that he missed those 2 field goals.
One kick, there was a bad snap.
The other one was blocked. I mean, even though it was like slightly tipped, and that's why it was blocked, it did look like it was tipped a little bit even closer maybe to the goalpost. So it's tough to tell whether or not, or like how much of that is on him. Jaden O, also being a freshman, I mean, there's not a whole lot of expectations you can put on him. Although, kicking is never easy. I don't want to end up on the college game day Pat McAfee.
You don't think you can make that?
I think I could make that, but I'm not going to, loudly profess that I could make that, because kicking is hard and there's a lot of variables in it. But this team does have to execute way, way better on special teams. We saw it in the Georgia Tech game with, miscues in special teams. The blocking was not great. Going downfield, the gunners have not been that great. I mean, Jack Stonehouse has really been the only bright part of this, SU special teams. And I think even at times he hasn't been the best. So it's really kind of all over the place.
Absolutely. He had the one punt and put him within the 5-yard line today. But there was a couple times on kickoff returns just missing simple tackles. Holy Cross starting a drive where they could have started on the 15. They ended up starting on like the 30, 35-yard line. Those yards, maybe they don't matter against Holy Cross. They're going to matter against next week against UNLV.
Yeah.
They're going to matter against NC State. They're going to matter against Miami. Everything is going to matter as we continue to move forward.
Yeah.
You just can't have these silly mistakes like that.
No, you really cannot. And I mean, the special teams did not help out in any facet. Obviously, the defense today, though, because of how up and down it was kind of a mix each time of we didn't know which facet was going to be the letdown at each point because every team or every part of the team has had its struggles. We saw the defense struggle through the first 2 games. We saw the offense struggle against Stanford. We've seen the special teams struggle every single game. But you never knew what you were going to get out of today's game. And I think there were, letdowns and high spots really at every point, especially the high spots coming for that second half on defense. I mean, they were tremendous after that run of 14 points from Holy Cross. Things really turned around.
Yes, letdowns and high spots. That was a key to the game. If you guys have any letdowns you want to talk about or any high spots, highs and lows throughout this game that you want to get on the air and talk about it, give us a call at 315-443-2011 or text us at 315-556-3929. We want to get your voice heard and talk to you guys on the air. We're also on Twitter at WAER Sports Talk on Twitter and on YouTube. To me, a high spot, I don't know if I'm on an island here, but actually I'm definitely not. King Joseph Edwards today.
Oh, yeah.
Huge performance today out there. One of the better ones we've seen defensively so far this year. 3 sacks out there, disrupting plays all over the field today. That's a guy that I really think could play a key role, especially if, like our last caller, Jay, talked about, if you wanted to put Fadil Diggs back in that linebacker area and move Barron back to safety, and then that opens up more room for Edwards to fill in and play on the line, I'd start to really feel comfortable with that. He's shown me growth throughout the season, and today really played well with 3 sacks.
Yeah, and I'm not even kidding. I was just about to say that, and I agree. Those 3 sacks, too, that he had, by the way, were the most in a game for a Syracuse player since Kingsley Jonathan in 2021, an NFL player. And he did that in really his first game of actual action.
They both got King in their name, too.
That's true. Both have King in their name.
We need to start recruiting more Kings.
West African names sometimes have the best names, too. King and Prince and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of those names are very fun. But, no, I agree with you in the fact that, if you can move King Joseph Edwards to being a reliable edge rusher, I mean, that opens up so much. Because, yeah, Jay said it. You don't have to always have Justin Barron there if Fadil Diggs can be there. And, I mean, now I believe now King Joseph Edwards leads the team in sacks. So
I think you're probably pretty close on that.
No matter how good the production, has been in terms of tackles for loss or, anything else that Fadil Diggs has done from an edge spot.
More matters in the grand scheme of things is that, yes, that he might make the bigger plays on the D-line, but overall the defense is better with Diggs in that second level there rather than the first line.
I think you'll take that as a sacrifice, too, not having Fadil Diggs coming off the edge and playing that middle linebacker
spot. That's totally
spot.
fair. It's about the team rather than his individual assignments. I think he's totally will understand that and okay with that. It's about winning the game, and if Coach Fran and Elijah Robinson think that Diggs might be better at that second level just to open up more spots on the D-line, especially with Marlowe Wax out for another couple of weeks still. He'll be back in a couple of weeks, and then you can return back to form, but that would also give more time for when Marlowe Wax comes back. That opens up room for everybody with more experience and talent on the team all around.
No, I agree, and maybe King Joseph Edwards isn't there to the point yet of Fadil Diggs of being that tremendous edge rusher, but I gotta say, I mean, not Fadil Diggs, but rather King Joseph Edwards. The tool bag that he has as an edge rusher already, really good edge bend, a great motor. Like, these are all things that NFL scouts are looking for. And I know it's just, against Holy Cross and an FCS school, maybe in garbage time. But, that is very, very impressive.
I was very, very impressed with King Joseph Edwards today. But we have Howie in the car. He wants to talk about how impressed he was with King Joseph Edwards today.
Yeah, gentlemen, great job so far. I've been listening to you as I'm driving into Syracuse. King Joseph Edwards, everybody who follows him on social media knows, this guy's basically an extra recruiter. And I've been looking at the stats each game, what's he done? And correct me if I'm wrong, those 3 sacks today, were those his first 3 tackles at the collegiate level?
Yes, I believe so.
Yes, they were.
It's talk about starting off with a bang. I guess maybe seeing Freeney a few weeks ago probably inspired him, but he can't break the record in a day, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
But I think, if anything, I think what you guys were saying while I was, like, on hold, put my name in, if anything, getting Edwards playing time, I'm hoping, just provides Brown and Robinson with options down the road as the schedule gets tougher. And then, you know, next year the sky's the limit. One other note that I've noticed in the 4 games is, and you guys touched on it before, the offensive line, which, you know, it's all a bunch of big boys, a lot of transfer portal guys and everything else, but there's just too many holes in it.
Yeah.
And while McCord's throwing the ball a bunch, and it's awesome to watch, believe me, I suffered through I graduated Syracuse 02. I suffered through a lot of bad years. So, I mean,
I bet.
But McCord's exciting, but at the same time, it's just like, can we give him a little bit more protection and give the running backs a chance to actually get more than 3-point whatever yards to carry?
Yeah, 3.2
I'd like to see the offensive line perform a little bit better. But, no, when Edwards got in, I'm like, okay, cool, let's see what he can do. I'm like, what, like the first snap, he gets a sack. I'm like, this is amazing. Maybe he is as good as advertised. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he puts on Twitter later. But,
yeah. I agree.
Keep it up. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you very much, Harry, too. And I agree with you on that. You know, King Joseph Edwards coming in and making those first 3 tackles and having those be sacks. I mean, what he saw, maybe Freeney did help him. If he can develop that Freeney spin move, too. This is a guy where the ceiling is limitless. And obviously,
absolutely.
I know we have to qualify every time. Yes, this is Holy Cross. This is his first real collegiate action, getting his first real collegiate snaps.
Start, I think just like how I said, you can't start better than you did today.
No.
I can't ask for any more. He's been a guy that's been kind of buried in the depth chart with that in the 2 or 3 line there. But today, he gets the opportunity, and he absolutely makes the most of it. There's no reason that I don't think that he could continue to do this every week as the opportunities are going to continue to build. And something I really like that Howie said was giving more options for Elijah Robinson towards the end of the season. Because football, it's a tough sport. Injuries happen, so you're going to need more depth as the season goes on. Having more options like that will be huge for this team going to the end of the season.
Yeah, I wanted to check real quick just to make sure if King Joseph Edwards had tweeted yet after the game. He has not tweeted yet, so he's still
celebrating.
He's still celebrating right now his great day, Griffin.
All right, well, that'll be enough about King Joseph Edwards for right now. We're going to be running into another quick break here on the double overtime, but Syracuse beats Stanford 42. Not Stanford. Syracuse beats
We wish they beat Stanford.
We definitely do. Syracuse beats Holy Cross 42-14. When we come back, our WAER sports talk reporter from Inside the Dome, Skylar Wilkes, will join us. But for now, we're going to step aside for a quick break.
Thanks for listening. Not a member yet? Make a first-time gift today and help empower WAER to provide trusted journalism, music discovery, and community conversation for all, no matter where you live or how you listen, from broadcast to podcast, on air and online. Members help power everything you find at WAER. Please give today at WAER.org to support this work.
At Marketplace, we help you understand what's going on in the economy and why. There is no topic too large or too small, whether it's the housing market, jobs, interest rates, even the prices we are paying at the grocery store. Our independent journalism is critical in helping you connect the dots and getting the context that you need. So, join me, Kai Risdal, every weekday on Marketplace.
Weeknights at 6 on 88.3 WAER.
Race impacts our lives, sometimes in ways that hit us like a ton of bricks, but often it's way more subtle, but just as powerful. Every week on Code Switch, we create language to talk about race, so you feel less alone.
And on Life Kit, we give you practical tips and tricks so you can live a better life and finally achieve your goals. Tune into Code Switch and Life Kit from NPR.
Saturdays at 10 a.m. on 88.3 WAER.
On the next Putumayo World Music Hour, we'll traverse many of the original 7 Celtic nations and venture beyond for lilting Celtic melodies from Africa, Italy, Canada, and Spain. I'm Rosalie Howarth. Join me for Celtic Around the World, the next Putumayo World Music Hour.
Sunday night at 11 on WAER.
We know you've got a lot to do in a day, and sometimes it may not be easy to tune in at exactly the right time to catch WAER News. But WAER News is always available, wherever and whenever you are, without a paywall. Visit our website to use our live stream or catch up on local and national news, as well as podcasts on our website at WAER.org.
Jackson Meeks isolated out to the left. Now he motions Allen out, claps his hands, takes the snap, looking right. Pressure in the backfield, he rolls out to his left, floats a pass to Hatcher in the end zone, caught, touchdown! Umari Hatcher, a second consecutive week for the touchdown grab. And Syracuse leads it 6-0 with 9:11 to go in the first quarter.
Boy, that offense really showed up at certain times today. We're welcoming you back into the double overtime here on WAER inside our Ostrom Avenue studios. Hudson Ridley here with you, Griffin Marcy across the table from me, and to our left, a reporter who was in the Dome today for what was reportedly a sellout crowd before we got there. Nope, not particularly, but Skylar, I want you to, Skylar Wilkes, by the way, is on with us. Skylar, what was it like inside the Dome today, just overall?
Well, I can tell you with the utmost certainty that it was not a sellout. It looked less crowded than it was last week against Stanford.
Really?
It just was not very packed. It would get loud on third down, sure, because it's a dome and there are a decent amount of people in there. The student section was solid, I guess, but no, it was. You would have thought that the way they were advertising it, that
I'm not doubting all the tickets were sold, but the seats were not filled by any means.
No.
Yeah.
From at least what we saw from the TV, but you can tell from in person.
Yeah, no, it definitely wasn't embarrassing, but it was. You know, you would have to toe that line very carefully for legal obligations to say, oh, it's a sellout. Yeah, no chance.
Yeah, no, it's definitely still hitting the pockets of the athletic department, though, which I guess is a good thing. But at the same time, yeah, not a sellout crowd, but still enough fans in the Dome today to watch what was an up and down performance. Is more up than down. But, well, you're kind of looking a little bit. Would you agree?
Well, I guess I would. It's concerning when you play an FCS team. Not only, this is not any disrespect to Holy Cross. They admittedly know their best running back gone. Their defensive line incredibly banged up. It's not like this is last year's Holy Cross team led by Bob Chesney with Matt Sluka and Jalen Coker and all these really talented pieces. This is a completely different Holy Cross team, and you struggled against them more than there were multiple drives. It was so. I think the extremes were unbelievable. I mean, so easy at times, and then, this offense looks incapable of moving.
Yeah. I think there are, some ACC teams that Syracuse will face later down the road that if they took on Holy Cross, say a Boston College would take on Holy Cross, which actually that was a close game last year. But like you mentioned, two completely different teams. If they took them on in that scenario, Cal or Pitt or even Miami at the end of the year, I mean, this would be a massive, massive blowout, and that's not what we saw from Syracuse.
Yeah, I mean, this is the closest they've played an FCS team since 2014 against Villanova. That was a double overtime game. Last year, right, blowout. Then the year before against Colgate, shutout. Then Wagner the year before, same thing. UAlbany, they dominated. And this year, right, the score doesn't necessarily signify it, but it was a 2-score game at halftime.
Yeah.
And it was a 1-score game at one point.
Till the very end, it was a 1-score game. We were watching this, and we were starting to get – I don't want to say that by any means I was worried that they were going to lose. But I was very disappointed with what I was seeing throughout the first half, just not feeling comfortable with the expected domination just wasn't
I think
there.
that's what it was, right? You weren't concerned. You never thought they were really going to lose, but you kind of were thinking, what does this mean for the future?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? What does this mean for next week against UNLV? What does it mean for the week after that against NC State? That's what you were really concerned about. You were thinking far ahead in the future because, right, they laid an egg against Stanford, and then they were not very impressive today against Holy Cross. So now you're really starting to get into the meat and potatoes of your schedule. What is this team going to look like?
You figured they would come out with their heads on fire, and you're right. It is a little bit concerning. If you were concerned, you can call in and tell us 315-443-2011, or you can tweet at us at WAER Sports Talk. We can also text 315-556-3929 is that number to text. But you're right. It was concerning at that point. The offense did end up flipping maybe not a switch, rather the defense
That's what
honestly
it was.
flipped more of a switch than the
put
offense
the
did.
in the right position so that they could do those things.
Exactly. What do you think changed with that defense to make them from 0 to hero from that second quarter to really the end of the first half and then into the second half?
Well, Fran Brown was saying that it was kind of just reiterating like you can act more strategically. You don't need to either go full tilt all the time. Play to your strengths, and that's what they started to do. The pass rush in the first half was almost ineffective. I mean, Joe Pazanski had all the time in the world, it seemed like, or at least he was making good use of his legs. And then suddenly the second half comes around and no one's open. He's struggling to throw the ball. The pass rush is eating him up, and it was just a more dialed-in defense that it wasn't necessarily the game call. I think they unlocked a different mentality that they didn't necessarily do offensively.
So you mentioned Fran Brown there bringing up the strategic. I would be kind of curious to know what his demeanor was like after the game. From what vibe did you get from Fran? Whether did you think he was satisfied with how things went or looking for more like the rest of us here?
I didn't. With him, he's so hard to read. He's he has really locked down that poker face. He has a really good poker face.
He really does.
And so I think you could kind of tell that he was disappointed in a way that they didn't play as well as they should have or could have. But he said there are things we need to work on. There are things that worked really well, and penalties was a thing that he really emphasized. That was a real issue for this team today, especially situationally. That's why Kyle McCord, he said, ended up throwing 50 passes because they would get behind the chains with penalties. I think about that drive where it ended up in the missed field goal, the second one from Denneberg, where you had the touchdown to Hatcher, then the screen to LeQuinn Allen. Both of those were big hitters, and they got called back due to penalties.
Yeah.
And so you're really forcing Kyle McCord to overwork. There's no reason he should have thrown 50 passes in this game.
Not at all.
I completely agree. You want to keep your quarterback as safe as possible. No reason against an FCS team that you should have him dropping back 50 times a game.
Yeah.
You should be running the ball.
That's a career high, by the way.
Yeah, that's a career high, and it happened against Holy Cross.
That should be happening in a shootout at UNLV next week.
Yeah, which is what will likely happen with what we saw today, even without their starting
This should have been feeding LeQuinn Allen, he getting 22 touches, then feeding
16 and for 80. Like that's I heard you guys talking about harping on the rushing attack. I thought it was like LeQuinn Allen, 5.1 yards per carry. I thought he was really effective. It seemed like every single time that he was getting the ball, he was gaining some form of positive yardage.
But I still wanted a little bit more. I know 16 carries it's a good hefty amount. But Kyle McCord, there was a lot of plays run in this game. There was just a lot of offense. So if it's either giving the ball to LeQuint or Kyle McCord dropping back again and again and again, I'd rather give it to LeQuint or get the backup running backs involved.
Well, I was just about to say, I'd rather get the backup running backs involved because he had 16 carries from Allen, and then the combination of Nixon and Willis had 11. And this is a game where you can show more. Right. Especially Willis, I think, in this game. This was the game they needed him. Me too. He looked great. What did you see from him today?
Almost 7 yards of carry today from him.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a huge fan of him ever since I saw him in the spring game. He just has this great running back build. He's can lower his shoulder, run over you, but he's also got a bit of elusiveness. He's not as dominant or as impressive of a pass catcher as LeQuinn Allen, who might be the best pass-catching running back in the entire ACC.
Yeah.
I mean, it is unreal. But you've seen Willis. I mean, it's almost like a Sean Tucker, LeQuinn Allen thing. Of old, right? Like LeQuinn Allen is that.
That's something Syracuse fans would be very happy to have in a couple of years if we want to keep passing down this mantle of running backs.
I can totally see that happening.
Yeah,
that's
I don't argue
how high
with that
I am on Yassine Willis.
No, I agree with Yassine Willis. That's why he needs more than 4 carries. Like this is a game where your bench is supposed to be emptied at a certain point, and even earlier in the game, if the game is still within reach, that's still a spot where you can take out LeQuinn Allen even if you're up 14 points because there should be faith in Yassine Willis. If he is getting that 6.8 yards per carry and breaking off, he had a 19-yard rush
the longest
today.
run out of anybody.
Exactly. He had the longest run out of anybody today. That's a guy you should be using a lot more. If you thought the offense had some struggles today, you can call in 315-443-2011 and let us know. Or if you have any questions for Skylar, you couldn't make it to the Dome? Well, he was there. You can call in or text us at 315-556-3929. But we talked about the offensive line not really creating a lot for him today. We saw some substitutions on that offensive line, but in general, really at both tackle spots, it was kind of a weak game. Enrique Cruz came in for a little for Savion Washington, which is something that, we heard a little bit about earlier in the week at the Fran Brown press conference.
Yeah, well, that backfired.
That backfired a bit.
Pretty bad.
That sack was not good.
No, it was not good. And the offensive line, the tackle last week, it was even worse.
Yeah,
You know,
it really
Stanford
was.
wreaking havoc on Kyle McCord, and he's really done a tremendous job this season working under pressure.
Yeah.
Constantly under duress, and he's not the most mobile guy out there.
He's kind of shown it a
but
little bit
he
today,
is,
though.
today, that touchdown pass to Hatcher.
Yeah, rolling to his left, putting it on the money in the back of the end zone.
Pocket collapses, and he just rolls to his left.
Yeah.
I've really been impressed with. Again, he's not going to be like a Garrett Schrader or a Matt Sluka where he's running all over the place, but he's such a better. He's light years of a better passer than they are, so it just makes up for it.
The thing
Anyways.
that impresses me, too, the most with that is that he's coming from Ohio State, which is a system that may be the most tailored stand in the pocket and deliver system ever, which is all that he did there.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if you saw last week when Kyle McCord had that rushing touchdown against Stanford. Marvin Harrison Jr., the Cardinals wide receiver, like generational wide receiver prospect, son of Marvin Harrison, Syracuse legend, what he said on his Instagram story, he took a video of it and said, I didn't know you were running now. I didn't know you were taking off.
That reminded me of the John Elway kind of helicopter run in the Super Bowl that he had, where he kind of leaps over the pile and takes a hit. That was really Kyle McCord. He's been showing off the mobility. That's what he's.
That's the little league Kyle that they've been aspiring for.
And what I
every
think
week.
has impressed me the most about Kyle McCord, which I guess makes sense, but his drive to win and his competitiveness is second to none. He was, the press conference that he had earlier in the week, he was visibly shaken about the loss last week.
Yeah.
I was watching at the press conference after the game, and you could tell it was really hitting him hard. And, I mean, he's not used to losing.
Yeah, he wants to win.
And with that, right,
that's the environment you want here from a team and culture that, not necessarily culture, but the program that has been consistently winning 6-7 games.
He's been okay with mediocrity.
Yes, and you want the quarterback who's coming in. That's not okay. That's not what the standard should be. And he's kind of really worked to implement that so far.
And that's why with the mobility and everything, right? Like, again, we talked about
Put his body on the line.
Putting his body on the line to do anything he can to win. And it's part of the energy that Fran Brown has brought. It feels like I'm not watching the same team. Like, this is not even the same program that was on the field last year. They're just, everything is different about it. The energy, the offense, the defense. I don't know. It just is almost unrecognizable.
I agree, but I disagree, and here's why. I agree that the energy, the offense, like the look of this team is completely different. The outcomes of this team are slightly different and slightly better, but the way that this team sometimes
they do have the
folds
same
and
blunders.
collapses,
You're right.
It's the same mistakes, and that's
like
what I want to see.
Same old Syracuse over and over again. You just can't repeat the issues that you continuously have.
Right, and I want to correct you guys because you said that Kyle McCord's interception at the end of the first half was an arm punt. That was definitely not an arm punt.
Oh, actually, no, yes, it wasn't an arm punt. You're right. It was towards the sideline.
It was a corner, and
the corner
zone
route
just
to
dropped
Pena.
back.
Yeah.
So I just had to make that clarification.
No,
Because,
you're right. You're right.
He's such an accurate quarterback, but today, 56% completion percentage, that's low
He
for him.
seemed to be missing a lot of guys high.
a lot of them.
And then there was a couple times in the back of the end zone, he just overthrew him by a couple steps. Then there was the interception. He was rolling out of pocket, facing the pressure that we talked about.
That was an unwise throw.
Yeah,
And
forcing
he's
it.
been a
and there
very
was
smart
overhead,
with those interceptions. Like almost all of his interceptions this season have been kind of arm punts. Right? Like I just remember it's the first one against Ohio, where he was just looking downfield for Umari Hatcher with barely any time left in the half. Like that's not a real interception, if you will.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Right. You can live with that. But today, that second one was a tough one to watch because I think it was Darryl Gill he was looking for in the middle of the field, who's not necessarily a vertical threat. Has really impressed though, by the way. I mean, no Zede Haynes, no Manuel Ross. That's what I'm segueing a little bit.
Yeah.
The receiving corps, right? Aronde Gadsden, one catch for 40 yards or whatever. But who cares?
That is
the wide
true.
receiving corps has been spectacular.
I won't necessarily go who cares, though. I'd like to touch on the receiving corps with you and who stepped up today, but that's the second game in a row Rondé Gadsden just in the shadows.
I would say who cares today. That's what
today.
It's frustrating, but when you have the other guys producing, right? Like Jackson Meeks, 10 catches, 161 yards. Even LaQuinn Allen getting involved. Trevor Pena was effective. Umari Hatcher, obviously, obviously you'd love to see Rondé Gadsden go off like he did against NC State 2 years ago, or like he did to start the year. But I can live with him having a subpar showing if it means that everyone else is kind of eating for him.
Well, I can absolutely live with that, but I just don't think that will be the case as the season progresses. I think you're going to run into the better teams where they might have the better athletes. You're not playing Holy Cross every week.
Well, but see, that's the thing, right? Okay, the attention has been shifted on Gadsden, and that opens up the other opportunities for everyone.
Yeah.
So then there's realistically the best case scenario for Syracuse is you don't have enough. The defense doesn't have enough guys to cover all your weapons, which so far I think is a very plausible scenario.
I think they've shown they have the ability to do that. I'm not fully bought in on their consistency yet, but it's a good problem to have because past couple years you have not had this problem of, the weapons aren't stepping up left and right. Last year it was just
what
not
weapons?
the case. Exactly.
Yeah, last year was what weapons. I agree with you on that today, but in that Stanford game, even when all the attention was on Gadsden, it's still like the receivers weren't getting open. So if you compare it competition,
I don't know. Trevor Pena at least.
Trevor Pena was fine.
But so
and
that's
even
what I'm
today,
saying,
Jackson Meeks was, the
Right.
step-up guy. But at the same time, here's what we talked about earlier. The only reason why it would be a little bit worrying is I just want more tailored to Oronde Gadsden. That's what I want. Put him in motion, try to get him mismatches, or try to get him the ball in space, drag routes, just little underneath routes, something where you can get the ball in his hands, because I also feel like that's where he's really dangerous and deadly. I would argue even more so than Trevor Pena, a shorter, maybe speedier wide receiver.
Oronde Gadsden's more dangerous?
I like him in space more than Trevor Pena.
Like for a yak situation?
Yeah, for a yak situation.
I cannot agree with
I
you
think
on that
Trevor
at all.
Pena is great on yak, but I think Gadsden, with those long strides, the ability to break tackles, I know it's crazy to say, but I do like.
But
No,
Pena's
no,
way
no.
shiftier of a guy out there.
But Oronde Gadsden's way better at breaking
Physical,
tackles, and
okay.
he can be shifty. Oronde Gadsden, I mean, obviously this is thinking back to years past.
You're going
but
to go back to Purdue, aren't you?
Not just Purdue, but that season, it was 2022, where he had a tremendous season, and a lot of what he did, I mean, he was great in yak situations. We haven't seen that this year, and obviously we didn't last year because of his injury, but I think they can get that with him again, and that's why he was so effective in that season. That was a good part of why he was.
But it's also concerning, right? He had 7 targets.
Yeah, he
and
did.
1 catch.
He did.
You got to give Holy Cross a lot of credit. I mean, they were all over him.
Yeah.
You
And
do, but
he had no chance. There was
That's
almost
how you play Syracuse.
Right.
Yeah.
But then again, okay, you want to take Oronde Gadsden out of the picture. Why this guy Jackson Meeks from Georgia, who can
it's a
put
nice
up 10
problem
catches?
to have, isn't it? Like
It's
just
a phenomenal
weapons,
problem to have.
Zede Haynes, Jackson Meeks, Georgia transfers. I'd be okay with that being your backup options here at Syracuse from the years past.
Again, Umari Hatcher is really coming into his own.
Yeah.
And Daryl Gill has now as many catches this season as he had all of last year. He's stepped up. Like I said, no Zede Haynes, no Manuel Ross. Well, how about Daryl Gill?
Yeah.
He's had some big catches last week, and he stepped up just as well today.
You talk about stepping up too. There were a lot of guys that stepped up, especially late in the game. Some of the backups really shine today. If you have a favorite backup that had a great performance today, you can call in and let us know. 315-443-2011. But I do want to make sure, Skylar, that we ask you an important question. Obviously, in an FCS game, it is one of the most important questions. Who of the guys lower on the depth chart, some of the freshmen, buried guys, who stepped up today, in your opinion? I kind of already know your answer because it's pretty clear-cut. But if maybe you have more than one backup?
No, I don't want to necessarily go in the direction of King Edwards. Obviously that's the choice, but you even look at the box score, right? It's definitely someone on the defensive side because there just wasn't enough production offensively. I know he's not really a backup, but it was great to see Greg Delane out there back on the field. He missed the first 3 weeks with a broken hand, and he was targeted almost immediately when he went right into the game, had a pass breakup.
Yeah.
And, he's someone that, with the injury to Marcellus Barnes, they need him to step up. And he played his role really well. And Jaden Bellamy, he gets credit for that interception. He had 2 dropped interceptions.
Yeah, he
2
did.
really, pretty
very
easy dropped
plausible
interceptions.
catches,
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
Which, again, a crazy fact that his 2 interceptions have both been touchdowns in his career.
Nuts. Yeah.
But, I got to give a lot of credit to Greg Delane for getting out there, back on the field out of injury, and actually producing. He also had a tackle and half a tackle for loss with a pass breakup. So even with a cast on his hand, he was productive.
Something that worried me, especially coming into the season, was the depth in the secondary. But I think they've
proven
shown
they
that
got guys
they
out there.
perform well.
No, it's concerning. They haven't been too...
Depends opponent to opponent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it was a blunder there, but when Jaden Gould was in the middle of no man's land.
Bad. That was bad. He needed to drop back, follow the coverage, and he just stood there. He stepped
I
up.
haven't been impressed with the secondary the way Devin Grant has obviously been really impressive, but I haven't seen as much of Deuce Chestnut as I know they've kind of moved him to safety, which I don't know if I'm a fan of. I think he fits more as a corner.
I didn't love him at corner either, if I'm being honest.
He just has more of a corner build to me.
He does have more of a corner build. He's not built to be a safety physicality.
Not length. He doesn't have the length or necessarily the athleticism. He's got kind of that stockiness but the physicality to be a corner, and he just hasn't. He doesn't look like freshman Deuce Chestnut.
Yeah, I mean, in that freshman Deuce Chestnut, though, even with some man-to-man scenarios for freshman Deuce Chestnut were not great. But I think his zone coverage, I liked out of him more. So moving him to safety, I guess, in that regard, might be a better idea. But I don't know. For Deuce Chestnut, he's kind of all over the place and up in the air right now.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Used to say is this secondary, especially you're going to get against better passing teams, have not proven to be
the only guy that I've
sustainable.
really been impressed with is Clarence Lewis.
Yes,
I have been impressed with Clarence Lewis.
Obviously, he had the malfunction, which we're not going to call a malfunction, last week at the end of the game on 4th and 9.
No, that is not. That is simply not.
That's not his fault. That's not his fault.
Fran Brown made it very clear it was his fault. There was a lapse at the end there, but he's been the most impressive cornerback
by
on this
far.
Team. And he's been
came
really
into
the
today
cornerback one for this
6th
team.
in the country in passes defended per game.
Yeah.
2nd in the ACC. Had another one today. I mean, I don't think anyone really foresaw, Notre Dame transfer, obviously impressive. I don't think anyone really foresaw him coming into the season and being your true cornerback one. But so far through 4 games, he has certainly looked the part.
He excelled in those first 4 games, especially today. He also looked the part as well. Skylar, we thank you so much for joining us. Holy Cross Parents Weekend, sold out dome in quotes. That must have been a fun one.
It was. I mean, the energy was great. There was a lot of, cool names in attendance. The CEO of Scrub Daddy was sitting
wow.
An esteemed Syracuse alum was sitting in the box next
I did
to
not
me.
know that.
Yes.
Wow, Shark Tank
Right,
guy, correct?
exactly.
Yes, there you go. Yeah, well, you'll never know what you'll find out from Skylar Wilkes. Again, Skylar, we appreciate you joining us. We're up against a break again, but on the other side, we have our final words from today. Plus, we'll play a little waiver wire game. You're not going to want to miss it when the double overtime returns right after this.
Hey, this is Steve Inskeep. One of the things you can count on from NPR and this station, we've got your back. When it comes to reporting the news, bringing you facts you can count on. And one thing this station counts on is contributions to keep it going. You can help by donating a vehicle you no longer need, which is free to you, easy to do, and could mean hundreds of dollars worth of support. Thanks.
Visit WAER.org to get started today.
This week on Code Switch, we're talking about the rise of the Latino far right and what it means for America.
You're staring at a bloc that now feels the permission to sort of speak and be whomever they want to be.
Then on Life Kit, boost your mood in 15 minutes or less.
Things change in your body, your stress levels go down.
That's on Code Switch and Life Kit from NPR.
Saturday
The
morning from 10
Ostrom
to
Avenue
11.
Podcast, breaking down Syracuse athletics.
The students rush the field. The Orange are bowl eligible and 6-0 for just the 3rd time in the last 87 years.
And interviewing the industry's experts.
We are now joined by a very special guest. It's Emily Leiker of Syracuse.com.
Check out video interviews on YouTube at Ostrom Avenue Podcast and weekly episodes on WAER.org or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Deepa Fernandez. Vice presidential candidate Tim Walz went to China to teach in his 20s. He's become critical of the country's human rights abuses and leaders since.
He said some things about China was a great place to be, but he also said that the Chinese people would have no limits on their ability to grow and develop if they had proper leadership.
Next time, Here and Now.
Weekdays from noon to 2 on 88.3 WAER.
Takes a snap on 1st and goal, and the pass is caught by Pena, who zooms into the end zone for a Syracuse touchdown. Trevor to put the Orange up 2 scores. It's 27-14 with just above 30 seconds to play, and a PAT coming up for SU.
Hello and welcome back to the double overtime. Syracuse football beats Holy Cross 42-14 on this Saturday afternoon. Griffin Marcy and Hudson Ridley taking you up to 5 o'clock here on the double overtime. But we're just about to get into our final segment, the final word today. So Hudson, after this win today, a little bit lackadaisical, not lackadaisical, a little disappointing going into this one. What is your final word of the day?
Griffin, we need to reevaluate this team. That's what we have to do. Coming into the season, obviously it's very easy once you get, a new coach and a new quarterback to think you're going to win it all. Heck, I'm a Bears fan. I did that at the beginning of the year, and they suck now. So I have to reevaluate as a Bears fan. But as Syracuse fans and SU fans have to know that you have to reevaluate this team. This is not the team at the beginning of the year where you thought, oh, we have Kyle McCord. We're going to the playoff. This is an easy schedule. Well, this isn't an easy schedule anymore based on the performances that we've seen. You have to go up against UNLV, a potential contender right now for the Group of 5 spot in the college football playoff next week as your first game on the road. And then NC State, a team that was picked to finish top of the ACC. It's been a little bit rough, but Pittsburgh, whose offense is taken off. Boston College later, Cal, Miami, teams that have really surged up. This is not an easy schedule anymore by any means, and it just worries me that, we have this team all wrong, Griffin.
I am right there with you. I'm going to get into my final word, which just about said it. This schedule doesn't look so easy anymore.
Didn't mean to step on your toes there.
It's all good. You come into the season, guys, we don't play Florida. Syracuse doesn't play Florida State. They don't play Clemson. They don't play North Carolina. That sounds great. Well, that sounded great in the beginning where you thought, maybe we can cruise through. You play what used to be the bottom half of the rest of the league. Not so much what you're looking at anymore. If you're kind of struggling, you already have one ACC loss in Stanford. You beat a good Georgia Tech team, but today struggle with Holy Cross for a little bit. Looking ahead, first road game of the season out in Vegas. You're going to have to travel across the country. They won't have their starting quarterback. Okay, that's great. But you come back the next week. You're going down to Raleigh playing, which is not an easy environment, down at NC State. Then again on the road on Thursday night against Pitt. This isn't an easy schedule coming in the rest of the way like you thought it was going to be coming into the year. Thought you could cruise to maybe, depending on your expectations, 8 to 10 wins. But now it looks like you're going to have to work really hard for these games each and every week. UNLV is not going to be a slouch next week either. Need to prove yourself a little bit better to say, this schedule is so easy.
This month of October, Griffin, could be 0-3. Again, UNLV, NC
I don't think that's
State,
crazy
and
to say
Pittsburgh.
at all.
It's not crazy to say. Even UNLV with their backup quarterback still might beat you. Matt Sluka, we haven't talked about this yet, but the next matchup with UNLV, Matt Sluka, the starting quarterback of UNLV, who was once the starting quarterback of Holy Cross last year, has opted to put his name into the portal and redshirt instead of playing because the money that he was promised has not popped up for UNLV, which is surprising. You're in Vegas. You figure they'd have the money to pay him. But Griffin, right now, with their backup in, they're up 21-0 on Fresno State at the half. 21-0. They haven't missed a beat.
They haven't, and that's next week. You're going to go into Allegiant Stadium, a home game for UNLV. It's Fran Brown's first road game, and it's not something you could be really comfortable with on a Friday night, traveling cross-country next week, going into it. You can't be like, Syracuse got that easy. UNLV, they're not even a Power 4 team. So what? It's still a good football team out there. Out west, it's not something you should be comfortable with. You should be losing sleep over that every single night if you're a Syracuse fan this week.
If Syracuse does beat UNLV, here's a cool stat. If Syracuse does beat UNLV, it would complete a mini, quote, circle of suck is what they call it, when one team beats another, beats another, beats another. If Syracuse beats UNLV, UNLV beat Kansas, Kansas beat TCU, TCU beat Stanford, Stanford beat Syracuse. So a little interesting tidbit for you there. It's not like it matters, but that's a fun thing to look out
you do
for.
The transitive property there, one way or the other. It's close enough. So basically, that sounds perfect right there. But to me, I think going into UNLV next week, it's going to be what we thought you needed to do today. You theoretically have another chance to do it next week. Is before you get into conference play, just start finding that momentum, getting your groove going. Getting things smoothed out on offense, all the little hiccups you have, whether that's ironing out the run game, keeping McCord a little healthier. I mean, next week's probably your final opportunity before UConn to the end of the season to really get things, just try different things out.
What I want to see next week from Syracuse, I want to see more rushing attempts than passing attempts. Maybe not more, but a pretty
much better
split.
Balance.
A much better balance. McCord should not be throwing the ball 50 times against Holy Cross. We need to see more of a balance against UNLV. Like you said, get the run game going, and that'll help for the rest of the season.
I wouldn't be opposed to seeing a lot of more McCord throwing the ball next week. I think it's going to be a shootout to some degree, so you know what, your offense might have to throw it a little bit more. So that's going to come with the script of the game, which was not the script of the game today. But either way, it needs to be much more balanced next week.
Yeah, no, I fully think you have to address both sides of the ball more than they have. But again, Kyle McCord, a career day today. We'll see if he can continue to carry this over into the next week.
Absolutely. Well, that's just about to wrap things up here on the Double Overtime. Thank you for joining us. Once again, Syracuse beats Holy Cross 42-14 and moves to 3-1 on the season. We'll be back going into next week against UNLV on Friday, where the Double Overtime will go up until 2 a.m. with Andrew Selver and Skylar Wilkes. A couple thank yous to give out. Our producer, Andrew Delapiana, helping us out throughout the day. Our engineer, Andrew Selver, a lot of time on that board over the weekend, done a great job. Our reporter from Inside the Dome today, Skylar Wilkes. And on the WAER Sports Talk desk, Ben Chadwick, Adam Hipsky, and Rahil Jaswal. Thank you all very much for tuning in and joining us today.